Testing. Okay, great. I have volume. When I walked in, I was very concerned because I didn't see anyone. And it wasn't until a few minutes ago I realized you guys were being held hostage in the lobby. So I thought, nobody wants to hear about housing, but I see so many familiar faces. Miss Bobby, it's great to see you here. I can just go on and on. Several people that represent me on various committees, and also what I always refer to as the beloved community. We're not going to slow down because I want us to get going. I know everyone has a life, and we want to be very respectful of time. So whenever you want to count me in, I'm going to open my folder, and we are ready to get started with the conversation.
We're going live on DCTV at 5, 4, 3, 2.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the intro to the Comprehensive Housing Plan for DeKalb County. And I would like to say that we are extremely excited because since taking office on January 1st, 2025, we have made some tremendous gains in housing here in DeKalb County. This evening, I'd like to thank you all for being present. I recognize many of you because of your advocacy, also as members of the DeKalb County Board of Realtors that are present here with us this evening. And I'd like to begin by saying that housing is about more than a building and an address. Housing is actually about stability. It's about economic development. It's also about quality of life. And it's also about beginning the process of building generational wealth. In many communities, if there's no home ownership, there is no wealth. Also, you know, I can say that for most of us in here, we identify home ownership as buying into the American dream. But for many people, the American dream has become a dream deferred. As we continue to see the rising cost of housing inventory, also apartment communities, and it has created what has become for many unaffordable. Also, due to the housing crisis and the affordability crisis, and I would also like to say that affordability is determined by place. So when you look at median household incomes, depending upon the communities, affordability can look quite different. But the one thing that we found here in DeKalb County is that it is necessary for us to plan for the future. DeKalb County can no longer expect what we do not inspect. So this evening, you'll hear from DeKalb County's very first Chief Housing Officer. And I'd like to say that DeKalb County plans to grow, but we are very concerned with ensuring that everyone has access to housing. Housing is a human right. When residents have access to safe, secure, and affordable housing, it transforms communities, because also here in DeKalb County, we deal with ongoing issues associated with LLCs, Wall Street, and private investors in many of our legacy communities that are changing the dynamics and changing the landscape of those communities. And we realize the challenges that residents face who are vulnerable. So our comprehensive plan provides a coordinated strategy for advancing our vision. It also addresses the growing issue of homelessness. I'd like to say that in 2023, I commissioned a study through Ernst & Young that looked at housing affordability. And that study determined that if you live in Metro Atlanta and you earn minimum wage, you would need to work approximately 140 hours weekly to afford a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. That is not sustainable, nor is it realistic. So I'd like to say that what we have ahead of us is a conglomerate approach that we must take so that we're able to expand the inventory of affordable housing as well as quality rentals. And also, we want to support attainable housing while also promoting home ownership. So you'll hear about a lot of those efforts. Many of you receive our newsletters, so you see what we're all already doing. But equally important for us is ensuring that we are inclusive, that we promote equity, and also long-term sustainability. We understand that addressing our housing challenges will require collaboration. And many of you in this room, because you are real estate agents, you work in various professions that are associated with housing, are those partners. And in many instances, you may simply be the advocate who can help bridge your neighbors who aren't as connected to the resources that we have here in DeKalb County. So to help guide this work, I would like to announce this evening that we are establishing the DeKalb County Housing Council. It will be established by executive order. Now, there are some of you in this room who may actually be appointed to our Housing Council, because the council will bring together representatives from the community, also the housing industry, our various municipalities, as well as the Board of Commissioners, nonprofit organizations, civic organizations, and the General Assembly alongside local stakeholders to continuously address housing. The Housing Council will advise on emerging housing needs that support our communities and also help us with the implementation of strategies that reflect the experiences of our residents. We want to create an environment where all are welcome. Leading the countywide effort is DeKalb County's first Chief Housing Officer, Dr. Alan Ferguson. Dr. Ferguson, he brings with us extensive experience in affordable housing, community development, as well as real estate. Before joining DeKalb County, Dr. Ferguson served as the Chief Housing and Real Estate Officer for Atlanta Housing, where he helped deliver more than 3,200 affordable housing units in one fiscal year. And I'm sure he will talk to you about our plans, which are noble. So we are an administration that has a lot of work ahead of us because we are looking to build out our transit-oriented development projects that are both at Kensington Station as well as Indian Creek. And I'm also looking forward to have mixed-use developments right here on Candler Road. So he also previously led Atlanta Habitat for Humanity and expanded partnerships and created opportunities for families to achieve sustainability through home ownership. Dr. Ferguson now leads our efforts here in DeKalb County to expand housing opportunities, confront the pressing challenges that we see in the marketplace while fostering responsible, sustainable growth throughout the county. It is my pleasure at this time to turn over the microphone to Dr. Alan Ferguson, who will introduce the members of the team, and he will also guide you through DeKalb County's first comprehensive housing plan. Dr. Ferguson, the floor is yours.
Good evening, and thank you, Madam CEO, for the introduction. So the comprehensive housing plan is central to the work that I carry on through the Office of Housing under Madam CEO, because it provides the long-term strategic framework for how DeKalb County addresses housing across the entire continuum, from homelessness and rental housing to home ownership, housing production, preservation, and the systems that support development. So as Chief Housing Officer, my role is to help connect that strategy to implementation, bringing together county departments, housing agencies, municipalities, community partners, developers, service providers, and other stakeholders around a shared housing agenda. Importantly, this plan does not exist in isolation. It connects housing to DeKalb County's broader land use, infrastructure, transportation, economic development, and long-range planning priorities. The plan establishes a clear vision, a DeKalb County where everyone has access to safe, stable, quality housing that fosters community and creates pathways to success. From that vision flows the 5 major goals, which you'll hear about in our presentation. So, as Chief Housing Officer, I champion and coordinate that vision. But developing a truly comprehensive plan requires the expertise and leadership of our Department of Planning, particularly because so many of our housing opportunities are ultimately connected to how and where DeKalb grows. So that brings me to Eva Chavot, long-range planner in DeKalb County Planning with DeKalb County Planning and Sustainability Department and the county's project lead for the Comprehensive Housing Plan. Eva has been instrumental in coordinating this planning effort and working with our consultants, county partners, stakeholders, and community to move the plan forward. So Eva, I will turn it over to you to introduce the team as we begin this evening's conversation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eva Chavot. I'm a planner with the county, and I'm excited to be here to present to you the Comprehensive Housing Plan at this community showcase. I would like to introduce our consulting team from Enterprise and Sycamore. We have Madison Davis from Sycamore Consulting, as well as Bithia Palmer from Enterprise Community Partners here today. And we also have, we're start this presentation. Come on up, please. Oh, it's going to be Bithia Palmer from Enterprise here, and then Madison Davis from Sycamore Consulting. All right, so for this comprehensive housing plan, today we're going to be just discussing the overall vision and goals of our housing plan and making sure that you guys are all aware of why we're here, what we're doing today, and we have a great team behind this that have kind of worked for the last few months. So we've started this in November of 2025, and we've been working on it since. We've had 5 community conversations with all the districts of DeKalb County, so districts 1 through 7. We've been able to collect a lot of data going into this, and so we've conducted conversations with House ATL, different municipalities, really emphasizing cross-collaboration between us and our surrounding neighborhoods, whether those be other counties, incorporated parts of DeKalb County, et cetera. And so we're really excited to showcase kind of what we've got going on with this plan, how we're going to be implementing the plan. We've already rolled out some programs under Decide DeKalb and the Housing Development Authority, and so we're super excited to touch on those as well, and how they're actually going to help us move forward as we look at the next 10, 20 years of the housing market within this wonderful county. So I will let you guys take it away.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good. It is so good to be with you all this evening. My name is Bithia Palmer, and I'm with Enterprise Advisors. We are a part of Enterprise Community Partners, which is a national organization that is all about making home and community places of pride, power, and belonging. So we're really excited for this opportunity to be able to support DeKalb County because we know that's what the county is really trying to do here. I'm with Advisors, which is our consulting arm, but so happy to be joined by our Southeast Market. I see Beth and Shannon from our Atlanta team in the back. So we are really grateful to be able to bring national expertise with local perspective to this team. So we do housing plans like this with communities across the country, but really pride ourselves in making each one feel at home and really contextualize it to the needs of each community we work with. So it is an absolute privilege to support DeKalb County and all of you as the county moves forward with its housing planning efforts. I'll turn it to Madison to introduce Sycamore.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us this evening. My name is Madison Davis, and I'm a planner with Sycamore Consulting. We're a local firm that's based in Decatur that specializes in community engagement processes for large planning efforts like this for different local governments. Recently, we've been doing a lot of work in DeKalb County, particularly on the newly opened I-20, I-285 exchange, doing some work in Clarkston with a lot of the planning efforts that are going on there. And as you can see on the screen, that is our entire team minus one. We like to call ourselves small and mighty, and we're all DeKalb County residents, so this planning effort is really important to us in making sure that our neighbors are well taken care of. In getting to that, something that we've really appreciated on the project team before we jump into the meat and potatoes of our internal meetings is having a little grounding moment in order to make sure we remain humanized within this process. So I'd like you all to participate, if you're willing, to do a brief little exercise with me called Who's Your Neighbor? So if you could turn to your left, your right, maybe behind you or in the front, and take a brief moment to just introduce yourself to someone that you haven't met before. Pre-prepared questions? I don't know. All right. You can come back for a moment here. I hope you guys were able to meet someone new, start a new connection there. Just to ground us in tonight, you know, all of this work that we're doing here is ultimately to serve you all and to make sure that we're building communities out of the main neighborhoods that we have here. I also want to take a brief moment to recognize one of our commissioners, Presiding Officer Shakira Johnson, who's in the crowd with us. Yeah. Thank you so much for your support through this process, Commissioner, as well as our other commissioners who... Oh, I would also like to open the floor to recognize our state rep who is in the room for us. Thank you all again so much for coming and supporting this effort. We really appreciate you. So we're going to dive in to some of our presentation now. So we're going to start with a little recap of the project so far. So if you were with us during our March community conversation, some of this information may be familiar to you, but we want to make sure that we're all working from the same baseline. So to start with that, we want to ask, or we want to answer rather, what is a comprehensive housing plan? So many of you may have worked with the county when it's done its general comprehensive plan where it addresses the different aspects that make a community whole and working towards building a 20-year vision. With this plan, we're drilling down to just the housing components of that, but what takes this beyond a traditional housing study or assessment is that we are embedding actions and goals around those actions in order to make this a living document that's actionable, and we're also using the process itself to bring our county leaders and different stakeholders to the table to have a meaningful conversation around what is a good vision for DeKalb's housing future. And you all are also a part of that stakeholder group, so again, thank you for coming. We've been approaching this work in two phases. We completed our first discovery phase back in the spring, so that consisted of an existing conditions analysis where we looked at the different opportunities and needs that exist in DeKalb around housing. We were also looking to see what tools and initiatives already exist in the local area that need to be unearthed and brought to the fore for more people to be aware. We, of course, looked at our demographic and economic data so that we can get a good picture of who DeKalb is from that standpoint. And then we looked at the existing housing stock in order to get a clear idea of what types of housing we have, where, and see where some of those gaps may exist. We also did a market analysis research of some of that information. It's on the boards outside in the atrium, so I hope you take a look at those after the presentation today. Currently, we are in our second phase where we're doing our strategic action planning. So a lot of that has to do with creating the visions and goals, as Dr. Ferguson mentioned during his introduction. We're working on developing those strategic actions in order to make sure that we're adequately reaching those goals. And then we're going to work to create an implementation roadmap so that we can chart out what that future path looks like for us, as well as looking at some key metrics to make sure that we're achieving as we set out to do. A lot of these activities, particularly with the strategy development and looking at some of the prioritization for some of those skills, we're going to be workshopping with you all today. All right, then looking at the engagement that we've had so far. So in our first phase of engagement, we developed our public involvement plan in order to create that baseline for how we were going to be engaging with you all, and then did our first convenings of the stakeholder groups that were mentioned during Eva Chavot's introduction. We went before the Board of Commissioners in February in order to formally announce the plan to the community and launch our project website so that we could start getting feedback from members of the community. Now in the second phase, we've recently concluded our resident focus groups. We had some small group detailed conversations with folks in order to drill into some of those concerns people are having. We've been doing work sessions with our stakeholder groups as we workshop through vision goals and different strategies. And of course, we're hosting this event tonight. And in the next phase of this process, the next segment of this phase of the process, we'll be continuing our work sessions with stakeholder groups, and then we'll be going back before the Board of Commissioners in November for final plan adoption. So that's a little snapshot of what we've been doing over the course of the past 8 or 9 months or so. And now it's a really important opportunity for you all to provide your feedback in the process. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Bithia to start to walk us through some of the key findings.
Thank you, Madison. All right, y'all, I know you didn't come here this evening to have a bunch of statistics read at you, so I promise I'm not going to do that to you, but we did want to ground the conversation with some of what we found through that process. So like Madison said, we did some deep analyses, and also we're out in the community. I'd love to see, just a show of hands, how many of you were able to join us for a community conversation or participated in any other way in the process? Okay, so a good number of hands. Well, thanks for coming back. We're hopeful that what you hear reflects what you shared with us as we have built a strong foundation for the vision, goals, and actions outlined in the strategic plan. So, what I'm about to share is by no means exhaustive. I'm going to keep it high energy as much as I can. We'll be sharing some numbers from the Census Bureau, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, from data from the county. So it's all really credible sources and as recent as we could get it for the purposes of this planning process. So first to start is our demographic and economic assessment. So what we learned through our process is that the county is a stably growing county. Between 2010 and 2020, the county experienced over 10% of growth, making it a mature, really stable county in its growth. So it's not rapidly expanding like some of the other counties in Metro Atlanta that are more on the edges, but still steady growth happening across the county. But also we know that this isn't necessarily evenly distributed. So there's greater growth happening in some of the cities on the further north side of the county, and more stable and even maybe shrinking population in some of the unincorporated areas or smaller towns in the further south part of the county. We also found that DeKalb County is home to a substantial share of the region's Black population, with over 50% of the residents of DeKalb County being Black, but also having a large share of Latino and Asian American communities, particularly around I-85 and a few other clusters in the north part of the county. And so being mindful of how different communities think through cultural values, housing for everybody isn't something that we know can be one solution, one size fits all. So really understanding who lives in the county is really critical for our solutioning. We also know that incomes have risen, but DeKalb County still faces relatively high poverty and unemployment rates. So as we think about the incomes that individual has, as Madam CEO said, housing affordability is relative. So understanding the household incomes of everybody in the county is really important to make sure that we're building housing and encouraging housing that's affordable at a broad range of price points. And then also we recognize that household composition is diversifying. We're seeing less households with children, actually, and we're seeing more senior populations, too. So again, as the county's population continues to change, thinking about how its physical housing stock and policy can be adaptive to those shifts that the residents of DeKalb will anticipate seeing over the next 10, 20, 30 years. We also know that there's differences in educational attainment. And again, like most maps for DeKalb County, you'll see some patterns, and we'll share some maps in a little bit here. But we recognize that while there are certain parts of the county that have bachelor's degree and higher, conversely, there's parts of the county where there's high school degrees or less. And so again, understanding access to jobs and workforce development is a really key part of this planning process. And then finally, on that note, we know that the county supports a substantial job base. And something that is really interesting here is that 25% of residents report working from home today. And so we know when you're working from home, that also changes your housing needs in a way. What you want your house, your space to look and feel like differs when it also is functioning as your place of work. I'm going to slide into housing inventory here. So a few things is that production hasn't met demand. And we have a really interesting graphic that we'll see in a minute here, but something is that the county has some years of catch-up to play. And so really fostering growth and supply will be really essential for the county in the next 5 to 10 years. We also know that while rental housing options are declining, home ownership opportunities are increasing, which was a little surprising to us because we've all heard about the institutional investment trends that is happening particularly in the southern part of the county. And so we were interested to see that despite what we've known about that, there still are less rental units on the market relative to the whole. We also know that renter households are more likely to experience overcrowding and structural housing problems. That's something we're very aware of for the next 5 to 10 years. And then thinking about affordable housing specifically, I know that's something a lot of you are passionate about, and something that is going to be central to this plan is thinking about housing at all price points. But we know that affordable housing is at risk of loss in the next 10 to 15 years. The county is home to nearly 15,000 dedicated affordable housing units, but we're anticipating that almost 6,000 units could be lost in the next 10 years unless there's active, intentional preservation efforts made to keep those affordable. On the same note, the county's housing stock is aging. We found that 44% of homes were built before 1979. 44%. So that's a lot of homes that have higher lead risks that we know are just in need of weatherization updates, new roofs, new HVAC systems, home hardening as climate is getting hotter, just the need for making sure that homes are resilient and meeting the needs today and moving into the future. We also know that as our residents are aging, that there's going to be a need for homes to be fit for residents of all abilities. So that's thinking about how can homes be accessible? How can we think about universal design as something that is integrated into more housing, and that resources are made available to residents to be able to stay where they live or transition into housing opportunities that meet their evolving needs. And then I'm going to move into the market analysis before turning it back to Madison here. So unfortunately, the affordability crisis DeKalb County is facing is severe and broadening. But we all know that's why we're here today, is to talk about solutions, and that we're grateful to have county leadership that is taking this challenge really seriously. Between 2015 and 2025, median home values increased by 115%. I'm going to let that one sit in. Between 2015 and 2025, median home values increased by 115%. And so while we know that's good for folks who are homeowners and they're seeing that increase in value, it also means it's becoming increasingly hard for people who want to buy their first house to get into the market. We also know for people who are on fixed incomes that it's really hard to keep up with those property taxes. So that 115% is very significant. On the rental side, we saw an 86% increase in that same window. So that's 86%. And so really recognizing that this particularly impacts residents who have the least resources. Thinking about serious interventions and creating more affordable rental housing is something this plan really tackles. We also know that the county is adding units faster than demolition, so that is good news. We're seeing a lot of building happening in the county faster than there has been within the last 10 years. So that's a positive trend, and demolitions aren't keeping up to pace. So we're seeing a net increase of units year over year at this point. Also really aware that construction costs are rising, operating costs are rising for affordable housing, and so total development costs are increasing. And so as the county designs policies and tools, being mindful of shifts in how affordable housing in particular is built is really important here. And with that, we've got a few maps to kind of visualize some of what we talked about here. So basically everything we talked about we know isn't necessarily equal across the county. And so these are just a few maps that highlight that. This first one on your left side is median household income. I know you all live here and know this and see this every day, but seeing the clustering of higher median household incomes further north and less so in the south. And then that map on the right there talks about transit and jobs. So the areas in purple are where there are jobs within a 45-minute transit commute. So for residents who are using public transit, to be within a 45-minute commute, you'll really need to be in those purple areas to be able to access jobs. And then also thinking about race and how that interplays with median home values. We know there's the overall household median home value is about $357,800. You can see some serious disparities happening there. Something as the county is aware of its history, our past of housing policy, and what that means for designing policy into the future. These are numbers that just can't be ignored. And then on the right-hand side is a market value assessment done by the Reinvestment Fund that really looks at different markets within the county too. So you'll see that map follows the patterns that we've been seeing in all the other maps, with the purple and blue markets happening further north. Those are where there's the highest home ownership rates, highest home values, and conversely, lower home values and lower home ownership rates further into that yellow area. And then just a few final graphics here. Like I said, we're seeing an increasing growth of housing units being added by year, and comparing that to population over time. So there's an interesting spike that happened, 2018. This mirrors a lot of national trends with a decrease through the pandemic in particular, but seeing an upturn. So that is something to celebrate. And then just understanding housing stock, looking at the large share of single-family units. All of those areas in dark blue are over 85% single-family housing units. So you can see where there's some gentler density mixed in there, but important to understand as we think about more households coming to DeKalb County and wanting to have more home ownership opportunities, thinking about where those can go. And then final image for today is about housing vouchers. So we know that across the 3 public housing authorities that serve DeKalb County, they have about 5,600 housing vouchers between them. So housing choice vouchers, people can take and use where they choose to. They're not restricted to specific buildings. But regardless, we see that folks who have housing choice vouchers largely do live in Central and South DeKalb County due to a number of structural challenges as well as people's choices. And with that, we are done with our readout of the numbers, but I'm really excited to share or have Madison share some of what we heard directly from community conversations and Engage DeKalb that you'll see was deeply integrated into those key findings that set the foundation for the rest of our work.
All right. Thanks, Bithia. Yeah, as she mentioned, I'm just going to go over some brief highlights about what we heard directly from the community, just so everyone can hear what their neighbors have been sharing about what those priorities are for the community. So starting first with this what residents want graphic, I want to start with the more affordable home ownership opportunities. We heard in almost every single venue that we went to that housing costs are a primary concern for folks, and steadily those costs are getting out of hand for people across the board. And so looking for more opportunities for home ownership for folks, particularly those in some of our key population groups, like our younger adults who have trouble entering the housing market, some of our senior residents who are having trouble downsizing when appropriate, and other concerns like that. Addressing that, one of the other options there, the smaller housing options, we particularly heard that looking for smaller starter homes, or as I mentioned, for our senior residents to size down as their life stages change. That was a pressing concern for folks. Looking at the variety of housing types that people were open to. We know that we have a lot of single-family homes in DeKalb County, but we also have a good mix of other things. People are open to seeing those more of those different options, those smaller-scale multifamily options, duplexes, quadplexes, and things like that, as long as that match communities. People are also interested in more mixed use and housing near our transit. So as Bithia had shown, a lot of that, the transit is clustered towards one area of the county, and so there's been more desire for mixed use and housing near and jobs near transit. People are also wanting more walkability in their communities. We know that a lot of the residents of the county do not drive, either through choice or ability. And so we want to make sure that the communities are more walkable for people. And a part of that is also investing in the existing communities. So from creating more walkability in places, also looking at the potential for actual housing maintenance and things like that, or addressing some abandoned or vacant properties that people think could be utilized in a better way. Just want to draw your attention to that quote at the bottom there. That really typifies what we heard throughout that process. There are no quality homes in my price range. So as been mentioned a few times, affordability is scalable, but we've been hearing that across the board from residents. All right. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we've also been doing resident focus groups. So we conducted 3 of those throughout the summer, looking at target populations of our unhoused residents, the young adults in the county from 25 and younger, the seniors in the county from 55 up, and then also looking at our different immigrant and refugee neighbors. The major things that we heard from that was a desire for an expanded variety of housing types, as mentioned before. Particularly our young adult participants wanted smaller homes so that they could enter the market, and many of our immigrant and refugee communities wanted an expansion of things like townhomes so that they had a sense of community and connectedness with people in their surrounding environment, but also a sense of privacy. Looking at that, we've also seen that people are wanting more safe intergenerational communal spaces in order to create more of a community feel across the county. I'll take a brief moment to direct you to the quote now. One of the things that we heard in our focus groups that we're building neighborhoods instead of communities. And so we want to make sure that as we approach this process, we are going towards that goal of having a communal feel and being comprehensive in that way. Also, people ask for reduced rental requirements. So as we know, when you're going to rent for a home, you may be asked for first month's rent, security deposit, all of your rental history being spotless in whatever way, X credit score. And so that creates a lot of burdens for our newly arrived neighbors who may not have some of those resources, or for our younger folks. And then, as I mentioned earlier, investment in housing maintenance itself. We know that a lot of our senior residents may have trouble because of those fixed incomes keeping up with the maintenance of their homes that they want to stay in. And so a lot of residents have been asking for that as well. I want to dive into some of these shared challenges across the different populations that we have, particularly that barriers to entering or re-entering the housing market. For our unhoused neighbors, that is a major concern for them, trying to re-engage with the housing market even when they've created a sense of stability for themselves to do that. We heard often from those groups and from the young adults that they are actively working or searching for work, but despite the work that they're able to get, they aren't able to afford the home, so they're caught in this cycle. A lot of our groups also mentioned the ineligibility of applying for or qualifying for different assistance programs. So it'll be an issue of my income is slightly out of the range to actually qualify for this, or I work too much to qualify for this. And so those are some of the shared challenges that folks across the community have been facing. All right, So we want to take a brief moment to turn it back to you all. So as you were walking in, you should have been handed a small sheet of paper. On one side of that is a brief 2-question survey. We're really interested in knowing what you found surprising from what we've presented today. And we're also curious about if there are other topics that you didn't hear that you think we need to explore before we end this process. So we want to give you all a few moments to do that. If you do not have a pen, I have some lovely colleagues in the audience. You can raise your hand, please, and we'll make sure that you get one of those pens to respond. And also on the back of that, we have an optional demographic survey that we asked for you to fill out, just so that we can ensure that we're hearing from a diversity of stakeholders and residents and make sure that our process is as inclusive as possible. So we're going to take a few moments for you to look at those questions and respond to that before we dive into the visions and goals for this process. So we're going to ask that you hold on to the surveys until after the presentation, and we'll pick those up from you on the way back into the atrium. All right, so take another 30 seconds here to respond, and then we'll dive back into the presentation. Thanks again, y'all. I would also like to mention we have Ms. Sonia down here. If you have an index card with a question on it, please raise your hand and hand it to Ms. Sonia down here. I'd appreciate that so that we can get to that during our Q&A session. Thank you so much.
Do we need music again? All right. Are we starting back up again? All right. All right. So thank you for providing your comments on the audience survey. I really want to emphasize that this comprehensive housing plan is not like housing assessments or housing studies that were done in the past, and that we really made an effort to have a very strong and robust community engagement element of it. And hopefully you'll see, through the previous slides, as well as what will come out in the final product, that we're listening. We're listening to our residents. We're listening to our various stakeholders. And we want to make sure that we're focusing on the things that the DeKalb County residents, the DeKalb County citizens want us to focus on and make priorities within our housing activities. But I'm going to talk about, setting the table on our vision and our goals that we're currently proposing. So the vision is for, as I mentioned earlier, DeKalb County, where everyone has access to safe, stable, and quality housing that fosters community and creates pathways to success. And the goals of this comprehensive housing plan really fall within 5 areas. First, to make homelessness rare, temporary, and non-recurring. To facilitate more quality rental housing that meets the needs of DeKalb County residents. Support more attainable and lasting homeownership. Strengthen housing development relationships, systems, and processes, and to optimize and increase resources to sustain housing production and preservation. And preservation efforts, a lot of people talk about, how do we build more housing? The preservation effort is just as important. As Bithia pointed out on an earlier slide, over the next 10 years, we're slated to lose 5,600, affordable units out of, our housing system if we don't make some interventions, during that time. And so one way to maintain affordability is to keep the affordable units that you have in place and make sure that they're maintained and of high quality. So I should also mention that, our goals that we're pursuing, they don't exist, within a vacuum. Right now, I'm very happy to say that there's this broader regional conversation that's going on regarding, housing production, and how to address, critical areas like homelessness and the underhoused. And DeKalb County is front and center as a part of those discussions. So it's a part of longer range planning, that's going on throughout the metropolitan area, especially through the core 5 counties of the metro, on developing this housing plan. A lot of what we're discussed here will actually be lifted up into some of the planning, for example, that the Atlanta Regional Commission is undertaking regarding housing, to make sure that everyone's housing plans and strategies are connected in some way to the overall growth of the metropolitan Atlanta region. So I really want to point that out as well. I won't go through all the bullet points on the slides because they're kind of tiny. Thanks.
All right, so what we have here is the how. So we've heard the vision and the goals laid out. How those are implemented matters too. So going through this process, hearing from all of you and your neighbors, we've heard that there's some central values that residents want to see uplifted through this work. Thinking about inclusivity, community, belonging. So people not just thinking about their house on a block by themselves, but thinking about that sense of community and connection. Thinking about how where they live brings access to other opportunities, to their relatives, to their friends, and feeling like they belong where they live. We also have heard equity as a central value, recognizing that things have to intentionally be done differently to bring about the vision that folks have for the future. And thinking about individual agency, people wanting to have choice in where they live, not having to live somewhere just because that's the only affordable option that's available to them, but people really wanting a say in where they choose to live in the county. And then finally, values of sustainability and resiliency. So we're thinking about environmental factors here, but also long-lasting impact. So where the county makes investments and where partnerships are really leading to better outcomes, thinking about the long game, not Band-Aids, not quick fixes, but things that will allow the county to grow and rebound time and time again in the future, no matter what happens. How these happen are outlined in those 4 practices. So we're thinking about how dollars are prioritized, how actual programs are designed, how the county does outreach and engagement, and then also how reporting and evaluation happens, recognizing that transparency is really key to make these values a reality. All right, so we've got 39 actions, so I'm definitely not going to read these bullet for bullet. As we go out into the workshop after this, y'all will have great opportunities to get your hands on each and every single one of these strategies that are identified here. So you'll have the chance to use stickers to share what your priorities are, and also help us map out where you think some of these key actions should happen. But thinking about homelessness, making it rare, non-recurring, and temporary, we also want to note for these particular actions that these will be supplemented by those actions uplifted in the county's unhoused plan. Really excited about that effort and are making sure that these 2 plans talk to each other. All too often, homelessness is treated as a separate issue than the rest of housing conversations, and we know that's just not how things work in real life. And so our hope is that we're able to uplift priorities that come straight from the unhoused plan into this document itself when it's released. And we're really thinking about the actions identified on the screen here as connectors. So ways that we can help residents stay housed so that they don't have to interact with the homelessness system in the first place. How we can help residents connect then to housing as they're moving from permanent supportive housing, transitional shelter, into permanent housing on their own. So that is what these actions are all about. The next goal around facilitating more quality rental housing that meets the needs of DeKalb County residents, we have 5 strategic actions for this one. And so these really fit into 3 buckets. One is around increasing rental housing choices. The second is around preserving existing affordability, which Dr. Ferguson talked about the importance of that. The third is about increasing the supply. So keeping what we have, but also making sure that more safe, quality housing is available for renters at different price points. And then last but not least, improving the quality of housing. We talked about as the housing stock is aging, the importance of investing in the homes that exist so that they're safe and quality, not just affordable, because we know all too often homes that are affordable come at the compromise of quality and safety. As we look at the next goal of supporting more attainable and lasting home ownership, we've got 8 actions here. And these really touch on a range of things from increasing resident readiness. So anybody in the room who wants to become a home buyer who's not currently one, thinking about how do we get you ready? So some actions that touch on that. For those of you who are homeowners and want to stay where you are, whether that's adjusting the house that you're in or finding something down the street that meets your needs at this stage in your life, thinking about how you can make those transitions smoothly. We also want to think about increasing home ownership opportunities across price points. As Madison said, there's a challenge that residents are experiencing every day in finding safe, quality home ownership opportunities that they can actually afford. And so thinking about the role that the county can play in making more affordable for-sale homes a reality. And then last but not least is thinking about how home ownership can be about intergenerational wealth building. So thinking about things like estate planning, thinking about resources relating to heirs properties. So really thinking about how wealth can stay in the community rather than extracted by external forces. The 4th goal is around strengthening housing development relationships, systems, and processes. We know this isn't like the funnest goal in the world, but it's so important. Thinking about the infrastructure that is needed to make all of these other goals come alive. And these goals really think about building intentional interagency partnership and coordination. It's making government work better together by leveraging all the different resources, agencies' powers, the resources that everybody has coming together and working smarter and more efficiently. We're thinking about how we can better connect residents with information and resources. The county has a wealth of resources and programs already. The state has a wealth of resources. If you live in a city, many cities in the county already have resources available to them. So some actions really around connecting residents and bringing awareness to those tools. And then also thinking about increasing the capacity of the development ecosystem. So how do we make sure that if you're an emerging developer or if you're a faith leader looking to activate your land for affordable housing, that you are able to have resources to build your capacity to play a part in DeKalb's housing solutions. And then this set of actions under the same goal really is about improving development processes for DeKalb County. So these are 5 actions that are all about the role that Planning and Sustainability Department can take in making DeKalb County an even friendlier place to build housing, preserve housing, make housing a reality. So that's a key part of this plan. And then our last goal is around optimizing and really stewarding resources, increasing resources to sustain housing production and preservation alike. And these goals fit into really 3 main buckets. The first is around thinking about land more strategically. DeKalb County has land that's owned by public sector entities, land that's in private hands. How can that land be used as an asset to be a place of increasing supply for housing? We're also thinking about increasing affordability requirements. So when the county is investing in housing, how can it incentivize and really require more affordability at different price points? And then the last component of this is really around expanding the funding pie. So we know that resources are limited, and so we need to increase the amount of resources that are available. That's both on the county revenue side, but also in bringing together private and philanthropic funders to bring this vision to life also. And so thinking through different ways to convene to really make sure that resources are being layered to have the greatest impact. And with that, we are moving into our Q&A. So excited to hear all of your thoughts out in the work session part of this evening. So thank you all for being here again. We're excited to hear your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those who registered online, they actually posted a number of questions, and so we'll try to get through as many of those as we can as possible. But I do want to recognize we have our Representative Mary Oliver, who wanted to ask a question for us as well.
Yes.
Yeah, Nick's running it out.
Probably could hear me, but this might be a little easier.
That is better. Yes.
On the issue particularly of extended stay hotels, we're in kind of a tough fight in the Capitol right now, and I need y'all's help. There's a group of hotel owners that want to make it easier to make even a greater profit off people that already have 2-3 jobs to pay the $100 a day to stay in the hotel. And then there's some of us that are trying to make what the law seems to be wanting to give some rights to those people in the hotels. You closed down, transferred 160 new units, and that's an example of trying to make this transition from the extended stay hotels into permanent housing. There's only one other, the Ralph David house over there on Moreland Avenue that's in edge of my district. That's the only other example of that. So I'm here to tell you that we need help on that issue under the umbrella of homelessness, and to tell you that the partners in the federal government and the partners in your state government, there's some good things that might give us additional opportunities. Thank you, Madam CEO, for letting me interrupt. I'm just really worried about the good and bad players way the fight's going in the Capitol to do more harm to those women and children, 4,000 to 6,000 that are living in these extended stay hotels now in DeKalb County, with thousands of children trying to go to school from a hotel room. Thank you, Madam CEO.
No, thank you. I'm thankful that you're here this evening because I want everyone to understand, yes, that what we're addressing requires a conglomerate approach. I also want to say that DeKalb County has actually leaned in because increasingly we do not receive enough federal funding to meet the needs of our residents. Of course, as we see an increase in the unhoused and homelessness, I spoke on it a bit earlier. What I'm seeing because of inflation, because of the cost of living, America is creating the working homeless, individuals who work each and every day and simply cannot afford to keep a roof over their heads. So if we are going to address the issue, we have to create solutions. Now, I've been working during the entire presentation, but I'm sure there was the discussion concerning the Housing Trust Fund that has been created and how those monies will help us in the creation and also filling the gap and being a better partner. But I don't want to take this time because I have questions that were given to me. And Dr. Ferguson, do you have questions as well, or is it? Am I reading?
I think you can read the questions, but I do want to, again, kind of reiterate and lift up the issue around homelessness and particularly those who are underhoused, which is how we describe people who are living in extended stay hotels. And, we already went through, this effort here in DeKalb County with Park 500, where we worked with our housing authority on a property they acquired and set aside 60 units for transitional housing for those families exiting extended stay hotels. But I'm very happy to say that we're looking to kind of learn from that exercise and try to, rinse and repeat, if you will, on future housing projects, as well as we are actually looking at some examples that our neighbors have done in terms of converting existing extended stay hotels into single room occupancy and studio units, for individuals, to house individuals. So taking them out of the hotel context and actually making them small, independent units where people can live. So we're looking at advancing that model here in DeKalb County as well for individuals. But for families, the hotel environment is really not conducive to family life. And so we want to make sure that we're moving those families into transitional housing where it can be more conducive to family life.
And I'd also like to say that what we're seeing, it requires people now to have, there's a difference between a minimum wage and a living wage. And many of the individuals that we've had to help most are simply vulnerable because of income. Income vulnerability is real. So also, I'm not sure if we really discussed this evening our wraparound services, because it's not enough to take an individual out of an environment. You have to take the environment out of the person. And you do that by providing the support they need, because many of these individuals have experienced trauma. So we didn't talk about the behavioral health services that we have, so we can do evaluations, and it requires trust. We've dealt with people for months before I realized issues because they didn't trust. So there's a lot of upskilling required, because we also encourage individuals that come into our programs to also seek a trade. Because in the state of Georgia, you have 18 free trades available to anyone that has a high school diploma, and you don't hear that enough. And many of those trades pay a higher income than does a 4-year college degree. So a large part of what we've done, even when it comes to creating home owners, To give an example, in the city of Lithonia, we had a resident several months ago that passed away who had actually lived in, I guess you'd say, public housing for over 60 years. In many instances, we're dealing with generational lacks of knowledge because no one has ever taken the time to say, you can own. This is how we do it. I'm sure you talked about NACA, or did we?
We have not
Okay.
mentioned NACA today, but they are coming back October 30th.
They will be back October 30th, and NACA has been described as the best mortgage in America. There's no down payment. There is no minimum credit score. There is no closing cost. So we have people that are constantly in a pipeline in DeKalb County because we have to meet you where you are. If you're not ready now, if you stay with us, we're going to work with you. And we do provide down payment assistance because what we found is the greatest hurdle to home ownership is the down payment. So reach out to us and we're willing to work with you. But I'm going to go into the questions now. And the first one is, are there considerations of partnerships with transitional housing programs like independent living?
Yes, we are definitely open, to partnerships and collaboration. We recognize and fully embrace that, although we kind of wield some power, if you will, some influence from a public standpoint, from a government standpoint, we can't do this and we can't address all of the housing opportunities in DeKalb County without those partners. And so, especially when it comes to those partners who are experienced with providing transitional housing as well as services to those homeless, individuals and families, to not only get them stabilized, but to position them in order to thrive and live independently. And so we're definitely open to future partnerships in that area.
And the next question, is there any discussion on the Memorial Drive corridor, specifically the extended stays and how they may be utilized as senior housing? Now, I will not say specifically that I've had a discussion concerning turning any extended stays on Memorial Drive into senior housing. However, you may have noticed, and I don't want to cross any gray areas, we had an announcement recently concerning blighted properties in DeKalb County, and the fact that we have gone from when I took office in January of 2025 from writing approximately 50 to 60 citations per month to writing anywhere from 200 and right about 250 to 270 per month. And the fact of the matter is, more blight didn't exist. We have not been as diligent as I believe we should be. And it's unfortunate because you can't, I often say, legislate morality and decency. But the bottom line is what we're dealing with are decades of omissions. And it's become difficult in many instances for homeowners now to make necessary repairs. So we have a home repair program for our seniors and for those who are income sensitive, because we're not here to punish you for not having resources, but we have to address the issues. Because many of these issues, when we talk about economic development, businesses don't want to come into blighted communities. So we have to also address the issue of facades on existing commercial structures, because we also have a problem there. So the efforts address our commercial properties in particular, because many individuals have purchased property and become very comfortable with what we consider to be blighted structures that are huge assets because of where they're located, and they are not moving them into productive use. So blight is going to cost you, because we now have a blight tax in DeKalb, which allows us to charge commercial, and I want to emphasize commercial entities up to 10 times the standard tax liability for blight. So you're going to do something, or we're going to do something. So for some, this has been the encouragement because, you know, we've been accused of quite a few things, but nonetheless, we are being diligent, and the city of Atlanta, Fulton County has the same policies. So with that being said, for those businesses that fail to be honorable, there will be a cost. And also there are some communities that I refuse to leave in the same condition in which I found them. I will not call them by name, but the conditions are deplorable. The property owners are keenly aware, and we cannot continue to turn a blind eye to what we see. They have to remediate those conditions, or it will have consequences. So we have our marching orders, and we're going to hold people accountable. So the next question, will there be any investments in schools and education in communities with slow growth? And I'll stop there. Just today, I had conversation with, and last week we sat down with Interim Superintendent Sauce, because we have several programs. Because when we say investments in school and education, even when it comes to crime and the monies that we've invested in policing in DeKalb County and technology, the number one underlying cause of crime is economics. If you solve the economic problem, you solve the criminal element. So we have to catch children early. We have to ensure, and actually this fall we're rolling out a program. Dr. Davis is not here, but literally we leave no child behind. Every child needs to sign during their 9th grade year a declaration of intent. Athletes aren't the only students who should declare their future. Every student should. And counselors need to be honorable in seeing that that child stays on track. And if the child changes their plans, then we need a new declaration of intent so we understand where you're going. Because we have too many children that I encounter who aren't aware that there's 18 free trades after graduation. No child in the state of Georgia should not have a plan, because there's lots of opportunities out there. So absolutely, and also let me say to you, we're keenly aware. The science and the numbers tell us where we need to go. I don't know if any of you in here are familiar with the United Way and their Child Wellbeing Index. But if you really want to be alarmed by what you see, you can pull up a map that was coded just like what we showed earlier with the household incomes, and you know exactly where your issues are. And it's very unfortunate, but if you layer it, that's where you find your highest incidence of crime. So this is a science. This is not an art. There's no reason for us to be confused. You have to take help where it's needed, and we have to acknowledge where those communities are, and it takes a village. DeKalb County alone cannot influence the outcome of children. It takes parenting. We're going away from housing, but any plans to redevelop South DeKalb Mall? Absolutely. We are marching down Memorial Drive. We're also marching down Candler Road. Our first stop was at the corner of Candler and Glenwood with our Publix that took 6 years. And my next stop will be at South DeKalb Mall. Now, I do want to say that we have been working with an individual who has an active contract. But for us, all options are on the table, because I firmly believe that in order for us to see the change that we need, we have to facilitate the development of catalytic projects. So through many of our new programs that we brought online, even with the Housing Trust Fund, it allows us to invest if we believe that project to be catalytic, pre-development dollars, whether it be housing and various other economic projects. Jacob Vallow is our Chief Development Officer, and he isn't with us, but just know that the promises made will be kept before I leave this administration. What's that? Okay. Any assistance to help seniors on a fixed income to pay taxes and stay in their homes? We want to help you stay in homes. As it relates to taxes, you know, I'm always glad when I get that question, because if you are a senior and you've seen your tax liability increase as a result of property values in your area that have increased, all you need to do is report down to the tax commissioner's office. And the only word I know to use is a tax freeze. If you demonstrate that your income hasn't changed and your tax liability has increased only because of the increase in property values in your area, your taxes will remain the same. Now, at which time that property transfers, new owners will receive the full breadth of whatever the tax liability is. So I have to say that. So if you inherit it or you turn it over to children or you transition it or you sell it, that new person doesn't get that the tax freeze. They will receive whatever has been deemed to be the proper amount by Calvin Hicks. So please reach out if you need us. Does the plan provide funds for maintenance, home improvements for seniors whose income cannot afford major repairs? DeKalb County, let me say that it's always a quick turnaround. We do maintain emergency funds because sometimes we have hot water heaters that go out, certain other issues that we can deal with quickly. But otherwise, there's a pot of money, and we give it to individuals who apply on a first-come, first-served basis. I do want to say that increasingly I've had calls from HOAs and organizations, and we cannot invest public tax money into the upkeep of your pool house and things of that nature. Now, I'm very sensitive to some legacy communities do not have HOAs. And even though it would be in the best interest of your neighbor to invest maybe $100 a year towards the upkeep, well, if you can't get them to do it, I can't tell you that the county can either, to be honest. So I always want to be very clear and transparent on that.
Madam CEO, if you don't mind, I would like to mention that we do have an owner-occupied rehab program that we're intending on hopefully launching by fourth quarter of this year called Brighter Home DeKalb. And we're going to offer up to $30,000 in critical repairs on homes. And so that's going to be a program that's going to be available countywide. I'm very excited that we're having some really productive conversations with some of our municipalities inside the county around partnering and bringing some of their city resources, combining those with the county resources so that we can do more repair work on homes. And that's something you'll be hearing more information on as we move closer to program launch, hopefully later this fall.
Now, also, this is a great question for you, so I don't keep talking. Has local government explored land trust or incentives to sell to buyers whose income is between $65,000 and $100,000?
Yes. So we're currently awaiting finalization. This past spring, we issued a request for proposals to create a feasibility study on creating a DeKalb County Community Land Trust. I think it's actually going to be called the DeKalb County Community Land and Property Trust, because we want to expand it beyond just residential housing. We want to have the opportunity to explore a commercial land trust, because I think, as everyone has learned, if you paid attention to some of the changing areas within the metropolitan area, is as important as it is to try to maintain and preserve legacy residents in place. There are also legacy small businesses and entrepreneurs that unless they're able to have a long-term foothold in their space, they're unable to remain there once, those gentrifying forces start to happen. And so we want to make sure that we don't exclude that opportunity for long-term commercial affordability as well. So that work is essentially, that RFP is being finalized right now. We'll be able to name and identify that selected respondent group of folks who are going to complete that study for us in the very near future. But absolutely, a countywide land trust type of entity is on the table for us to try to create and preserve long-term
And we also
affordability.
have the land bank,
Yes,
which
absolutely.
is, and I'll let you talk about that.
All right. Yeah, we're also great. Yeah, and towards that end as well, we're also working very closely with the DeKalb Regional Land Bank Authority. Their executive director, Tamika Churchill, she's been on board and she's right here in the audience. Yeah, 2+ years. They are going to be an integral part of the county strategy around ownership of public land and how that public land is activated and utilized to further not just only our housing opportunities, but also our economic development opportunities as well. So you can look forward to seeing more and more activity and great things coming out of our land bank authority as well.
And I'm going to go to this question. Seniors need trees to be cut down. Great need. You are absolutely correct. And again, you see increasingly trees being uprooted, and it has to do with the rainfall, torrential rainfall we get. There's a lot of elements there, and we do maintain a program. But again, I hope is everyone here receiving my weekly newsletter? If you're not, please register, because as soon as funds become available, that's where we advertise. All you have to do is click the button, go over and apply, and we literally issue the funds until they're gone. Seniors need MARTA back on McAfee. That's not as easy for me to say because ridership is based on needs. So are the routes. So again, they come to us with the science, and we don't have the ability to simply say that we can place a route. So there needs to be more conversation there. Home repairs we've talked about. I'm trying to get through as many as I can. Are condominium communities being included in existing investments, specifically struggling communities? Condominiums, and I'm assuming you're saying, do condominium owners have the right to apply for our repair funds? Is what I'm assuming.
Yes, condominium owners can apply for the right to repair funds. One of the complexities with condominiums, however, is that it takes, community buy-in in order to do things, external, to your home. But on the interior, if you have critical interior repairs, we're allowing that under our owner-occupied rehab program.
Okay, how can you provide input after tonight? What does the November BOC approval date mean? Will we continue to be able to impact how funds are used? Absolutely. Right now, I'm busy responding to y'all's emails. Send me one, you'll get a response. I work down the chain, so you're always welcome to reach out to us in the central office or your commissioners. We're all there to help. And in terms of the November BOC approval date, which item? Do you know which item, agenda item?
I think they're referring to, we're planning on presenting the comprehensive housing plan to our Board of Commissioners for approval in November as well, to be formally adopted.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, there will always be ongoing conversation, but when it comes to housing, it's sort of like from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, the issues don't change, just the location. So if we're informed, we really understand what it is we need to be doing, but we do welcome your input. What is the exact date in the fall to apply for the Brighton home repair renovation open up? As a general rule, when the funds come down, that's when we make them available. I'm not sure we can sit here at this moment generally and say a date. If you watch what's happening from the federal level to the state, you know that on any given day, we may get an executive order that changes everything that occurred the day before. There's no longer, and I'm being very honest with you, we've hired a new group out of Washington, and they're called The Group as our federal lobbyist, because when I came into office, I was hit with so many executive orders, it was unprecedented. And you must be complicit whether you agree with federal law or not, or you risk losing all of your federal funding. And I need you all to know that. So I can't sit around and sensationalize a response, because oftentimes we're waiting for the release of funds. So I can't sit here and say a date, but if you're receiving our newsletter, you will know as soon as we do, because it's not our goal to get money and hold it. What will be, or what is the approach for emergency housing? People who need emergency housing, first and foremost, need to reach out. We have Director Alan Mitchell that works with emergency housing. Also, our housing authority, Pete Walker. And we're very sensitive, but I do have to say that we do have to look at, as they say, the totality of circumstances. Are there children involved? Are there health issues involved? Are there seniors involved? What are the vulnerabilities? Because at any given time, I think now we have over 3,000 people that are currently on our list for affordable housing. So it is a slippery slope, but emergency housing, we're not going to leave unhoused people unhoused overnight. And also, I have to say, I don't know if we talked about our 400-bed shelter, did we?
They mentioned shelter.
Okay, well, let me say this, because I want to be very clear when I say this. You know, DeKalb County is investing in DeKalb County residents. And I have to say that because my obligation is to us. And what we found when we advertise certain things is you'll have a slew of folk from a different jurisdiction that will migrate over people. And although we are here in the spirit of helping, our resources have been spent for DeKalb County residents. So we do have, let there be no doubt here, do not walk away believing we do not have emergency housing if you come to us immediately. But I do have to also say that the biggest problem we have are people who will not accept our assistance. Because when you find a large portion of our unhoused community suffer from either a drug addiction or mental illness, and even when we send out crisis units, we wrap our arms around them, we attempt to assist them. If you're going to live in our shelters, we have a fiduciary responsibility for the care of those that are present. So you will not do certain things. You must undergo a screening so that we can ensure that you are adapted to the environment, that this can work for us all. And if not, then we're going to put you with the assistance you need first so that you're able to receive our help. And many of those individuals will refuse assistance, and you cannot force care. You cannot force care. So it's very much an ongoing cyclical thing. What is the county doing about cost of renting? We have Representative Mary Margaret Oliver here with us. And to be honest, in the state of Georgia, and I used to be able to quote the official code, annotated Georgia, but we are prohibited from interfering with the right of a property owner to set their rental rates. So in the state of Georgia in 2020, I'll use these as examples, we saw a 15% increase in rental rates. In 2021, we saw an additional 16%. So over a 2-year period, rental rates increased by 36%, and there's absolutely nothing we can do. Now, if you look across the country, New York, California, DC, Philadelphia. Philadelphia has the most stringent rental rate cap, is what I have lobbied the General Assembly for, and I want to thank Representative Mary Margaret Oliver because she was able to move the needle that would prohibit property owners from increasing rental rates, in my opinion, more than 5% year over year. You have to be incremental with people. But currently, law prevents us from doing that. So I can't sit here and say that there is anything I can do about you receiving a new rental rate that increased 20% over the year before. If you don't like it, honestly, then you need to find somewhere else to live, and we need to help you. So whatever help looks like, whether that means helping you with down payment, because many people who are renting could afford to purchase cheaper in today's market. One do well. Are there plans to expand the outreach efforts to get additional input given the relatively small size of the responses, i.e. 135 and 39 respectively? Maybe we need to do, are y'all familiar with Mentimeter? Okay, well, Mentimeter is where we can do something on Zoom and people can respond in real time and you can see the responses. Because oftentimes I've found when I do my robo-town halls, you get a higher response. So I want you to do this same thing, and we're going to include Mentimeter.
I will also mention that as a part of this workshop on our project website, we have virtual parallels of the exercises we're going to be asking you all to do in the lobby with us. So beyond tonight and for the folks that are joining us virtually, there are opportunities for you to give their input beyond this setting.
And last question here, how would you address the issue of allowing home vouchers to be used and accessed in the northern areas of DeKalb? Many home voucher recipients would appreciate the resources, schools, and safety that the North currently provides. Go to back. 2 questions. Will you share comprehensive housing plan with the DeKalb County School District? Has a meeting taking place? No, there has not been a meeting. We will share the plan with them, but let's start with vouchers, because even when vouchers are issued, you have to find someone who's willing to receive them. And I just want to be clear once again, because I never want there to be a conflict with me saying something that I can't do. And once it doesn't happen, then I lose credibility with you. I can't control that. You have to find someone who's willing to receive the voucher if you have it in whatever location you desire to live. What amount of the analysis and findings speaks to and addresses the aspect of the school system, particularly attendance zones? Have you engaged with the school system to address the intentional underpopulation of certain schools? I've never heard that before. So I'm not sure what the underpopulation of certain schools means. Has your analysis taken into account the role the banks, mortgage companies, and lenders play in terms of the types of loans they market, sell, and approve, and in what parts of the county? All I can say is with the partners that we have, I've expressed to you, some of the companies even offer below prime. I'm keenly aware, and DeKalb was hard hit during the economic downturn because more people in DeKalb, we were one of the 3 hardest hit, received balloon loans, escalating loans, and to be honest, shame on the one that issued it and shame on the one who received it, because you knew it was going to mature. And we had tons of people lose their homes, and I don't want to get into the dynamics of what the demographics look like, because we all know. So what I will say there is we are not going to direct you to anyone who is here to take advantage of you. So if you need assistance, then we're more than happy to connect you with credible organizations. PNC Bank has been a partner. Through PNC Bank, even as a commissioner, I started a first-time down payment assistance program for homeowners, and we've issued to date, I've stopped counting, over $22 million in first-time home loans and down payment assistance. And those are great loans through reputable banks that aren't fluctuating and changing with the market, okay? These are fixed rate, fixed term mortgages. And I guess I'm done. Is it more we're supposed to be doing?
I don't think so, because I think we're time constrained, are we? Or are we still have room for questions? Oh, yeah, we got the workshop outside. But what I will say, to echo Madam CEO's point, is that we've had a number of conversations with various lenders, big national lenders, local community-based lenders, as well as community development financial institutions that provide, low-cost attainable mortgages to serve DeKalb County. And so when we launch our down payment assistance program, as a part of that program, we're going to test the first mortgage that the prospective home buyer is getting to make sure that it is a affordable, sustainable mortgage, and they don't end up into a predatory loan, as Madam CEO mentioned. So we're being very diligent about our process and thoughtful to make sure that we give our DeKalb County residents, the best opportunity possible.
And with that, I see this sheet of 23 questions. Now, many of the questions have been answered round about, but what I'm going to do is pass this over to Dr. Alan Ferguson. Everyone knows I like special edition newsletters, so we'll do a special edition newsletter with his response to those questions. For those of you who are here, they may be repetitive, but for people who aren't, it'll be their first time reading them. So I would suggest you get your team on that.
Absolutely. We got it.
Okay? And yes, ma'am, I see your hand. Yes. To rebuild the lot. Well, you honestly may want to speak with some local developers and do some type of partnership, because one of the biggest problems we have is people come to us and they want to move a project forward, but they don't have site control. You have site control. So that can be your skin in the game, and work with the developer, develop the lot, and then, but I can't give you legal advice.
But what I can say is that, we've got a number of different housing programs that are coming forth here in DeKalb County. And one of those programs that we're launching is one we call Inside DeKalb. And Inside stands for Neighborhood Scale Incremental Development Education. And so you're the type of resident that we want to talk to and have participate in that program, because what it's designed to do is to take new developers, everyday folks who own property, who own land, and they want to build housing on that property, but they just don't know how to put all the pieces together. And so it's a training cohort that we're going to have where we're going to teach you how to put all of those pieces together, introduce you to qualified, experienced professionals that can help you navigate the process. And at the end of the day, you'll be eligible to apply for grants so that you can complete the final steps of your process before you move forward and start to build. So you can look forward to us launching that program. I don't believe it's going to get launched this fall, but in the spring of next year, we're looking forward to bringing that forward to DeKalb County.
And lastly, it automatically brought to my memory, DeKalb County will be hosting its first ever Developers Day in September. You'll see it in my newsletter. We are bringing developers in, and we have thus far a pretty stellar roster. And we are sharing with them prime pieces of land that we would like to see develop. We're seeking partnerships, and also with the passage of our trust fund, as I said, we now have monies to fill in the gap. So when you see the announcement go out, I approved it last week, of our first ever Developers Day, it would be beneficial for someone like you so that you understand the process of how to go about developing in DeKalb County, whether it be housing, whether it be commercial. Please come to the Developers Day, and if you don't, we will record it as we do all of our events, and it'll be in the newsletter. Yes. Well, let me say that those properties are owned by individuals. And you can't turn someone else's property into a facility for the county. I've had people come to us about a few empty locations and say, I would love to have those. Well, if you want to acquire them, then you have to contact the owner. You either have to purchase, but we don't have the authority to do that. Now, what we do is seek to find people who are willing to come into the county. We work with them, have the conversation on what are you doing to progressively move them forward. One CVS in particular that we've had several people reach out concerning is under contract. I know that Jacob Vallow or any community members here who were a part of that conversation when he came out and did the walkthrough. But again, we don't have the ability to take property that someone else owns and open it up for nonprofit organizations and say, you can have your meeting here, or you can have this building and you can use it. That's a land transaction. That's a sales transaction. Yes, ma'am. Hi. Okay, that's a good question. And I have a good relationship with DeKalb County Schools. My email address, if you don't have it, is lcjohnson@dekalbcountyga.gov. I'm more than happy to connect you so that we can have the conversation. I don't want to speak on their data because although I'm a supporter of our education in the school system, my daughter's gone, so I'm not in the middle of that anymore. So if you will, please send me an email so I can connect you. And also I will request, because I get more emails about the school system these days, as if I'm an honorary educator, and I connect you. I always get you there. But I need to see these reports for myself because I know that the community is very concerned, especially when you start to talk about closing schools. Yes. Yes, sir. Good to see you.
So the short answer to your question, yeah, okay, all right. I'll give you the short answer first. The short answer to your question is to get ready and to get prepared because, you know, as I sit here today, I'm going to call out my partners, my colleagues. We are working very closely with DeKalb Development Authority, and we are going to release an RFP for consultants to do a development cohort for faith-based, you know, institutions here in DeKalb County. And so, you know, kind of very similar, we're going to bring in, you know, houses of faith, houses of worship, you know, from all over the county, you know, who've kind of been there, done that to kind of share their experience. But we're also bringing in, you know, experienced, you know, trained professionals for church organizations to connect with so they can understand the full development process and what it takes. And then, you know, very similarly, we're going to be there at the end of the cohort when you're ready to move those, those dreams, forward and turn them into reality with some grant funding to support your pre-development needs and moving your projects forward. So that program is called the Land to Legacy Initiative. And as I mentioned, it's going to be a program we're going to run through DeKalb Development Authority, and we're looking to start that exercise in fourth quarter of this year.
We are currently working.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to interject here. Hi, everyone. It's Eva, I'm back. But we are currently doing our zone DeKalb, so that's our zoning ordinance update right now. It's one of the plans that the county is going through to update alongside the 2055 Unified Plan. So we are also looking at ordinances like that. We do have a QR code outside to kind of comment on any ordinance changes that you want to see or anything that you want them to focus on as they work through this process. We also have our representative from Current Planning here today, Yvonne Trammell, who will be able to speak on that a little bit more. But I do want to interject here a little bit because we do actually want to get to the showcase portion of this event, and then all those questions that you guys do have, we will try our best to answer. So we definitely want to get to the poster activities. I know that all the words on the screen are fun, but sometimes pictures are a little bit better. So we're hoping that you're able to participate in the map activities with us. I just want to say thank you so much to Madam CEO, Dr. Alan Ferguson, our consultants, Bithia Palmer and Madison Davis, for all the work that they've been doing, and for taking the time to answer these questions. So we really appreciate it.
I'm just going to say this, and then I'll go because I don't want to hijack this meeting. But First Baptist of Gresham, Pastor Norman Thomas, Pastor William Flippin, The Grove. Also, recently we worked with Pastor Jamal Bryant on The Village. Since Dr. Ferguson has come, he has put a name on what we do. Before he came, we just did it. So we have held, and I want to make sure that you're communicating with us, because last year I brought together probably about 60 clergy members. And we had a lunch and learn, and we talked to them about how to go about doing what you are asking now. So we're actively working with pastors, but we have now, with the RFP, we'll have a full-time person, because churches are really instrumental to getting us where we need to be, because they are the largest institutions of finance. DeKalb County is blessed with more mega churches than any other county in the state of Georgia. We need to help you. We have churches that receive $250,000 per Sunday. It's time we do something with it. Because I have to be clear when I say, when we talk about housing, DeKalb government is moving into areas that we were never designed to provide wraparound services. Government wasn't designed to provide housing. We provide essential services. We need to deliver that trash. We need to make sure you have clean water that arrives at your house. That's what government does. So we are now in gray areas, but it takes people like you to do the work. We're here to facilitate it. So if you'll send me an email, we can get started now. We don't have to wait for the RFP or the program, okay? Thank y'all for coming.
And our activity will be just outside, so feel free to just come back in the way you came, or come back out the way you came, and take some time to questions. Thank you.
Thank you.